that's when your business starts to cost you in a whole different way, right? Because chances are, if you are not present with your family, they are going to either push back, bring awareness to, or not really, you're not going to be able to enjoy that time together. Hello and welcome to the Moms Makin Dough podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt, and on today's episode, we are going to dive into finishing your year strong. Now, if you're like me, unfortunately, you don't really want to come to terms with the fact that we are less than almost 90 days out from when this episode will air to 2026. And I think that always brings up mixed feelings for us mom entrepreneurs, because it's mixing the hustle with trying to find harmony, right? And I feel like the hustle starts to absolutely consume us. And it's not just a holiday hustle, it's the actual hustle that is, like stress at the end of year and all of the things that come with owning a business and or just managing your financials towards the end of the year when you're like cramming all these things in that you might not have thought about, you might not have planned for, and you're just starting to feel more stressed than in your seasonal chipper self. And so today's episode, it's going to be a little bit, just real raw. We're not going to talk a lot about tactical stuff. I have done that in other episodes of what I do for a quarterly review, but the end of Q3, I take a little bit of a different approach to how I'm going to plan for Q4. And when I think about Q4, I don't mean business planning. If you have a seasonal business or a business that really wants to finish strong with a Q4, I suggest you listen to one of my episodes where I do talk about my quarterly review process. But this episode is really going to be focused on not so much setting your targets, like chasing after the targets. A lot of people, again, like myself, I like to look at my targets from that I set the previous year for 2025. And it's a time of period where it can start to really, you start to get in panic mode. It's like, oh shit, that I said this is one of my targets. Here's where I'm at. I want to really close the gap. I can hit this one. That conversation starts hitting up, but hit it at what cost? And so what I want to talk about today is just really, instead of setting targets to chase a certain achievement level, getting your schedule, your time, and your energy in alignment and choosing alignment over achievement. Also, I like to see this is a time of year where I really choose consciously, and this has been a work in progress, and that's why I wanted to do this as today's topic, because this is where I really switch my gears a little bit, and I go from focusing on how do I create peace and presence in my life instead of focus on my massive, always evolving relationship with productivity, like going from checking off that daily to-do list or that weekly to-do list or that monthly target list into how do I schedule the things that really matter. So this, like I said, is going to be a little bit of just like organic on some of the things that I do. I do have a kind of a general outline, but I'm sure I'm not going to really go off of it because it's a little bit more, like I said, when I tend to teach this, tends to get a little bit more tactical. And I want this to be more of a get you in your feelings. What are the feelings you want to create as you go into Q4? And man, feelings and business, those are typically not things that we generally put together, right? Like we typically, when we're looking at business, we're looking at hard facts, like hard numbers. And I want you to start to really take off that cap and put on this cap of like, hey, what do I want this season to feel like? Because you can get yourself in a point where you are just setting yourself for a complete burnout towards the end of the year. And here's what I find is that if you set yourself up for burnout before the end of the year, you're going to be starting 2026 at a deficit. You're going to be starting 2026 at in depletion, and or with the 3 Ds, disappointment, right? So the 3 Ds being disappointment, depletion, and also, like I said, just feeling really disconnected from what you actually want to create, and instead feeling reactive. And when I say reactive, I mean reactive to the other people in your life that really matter, not so much the timeline of your productivity and your targets. So let's dive in a little bit about this. Is not about, like I said, checking, looking at your numbers, hitting your numbers. This is not hustling till midnight every night. This is not checking boxes. This is like taking a conscious look 90 days out of like, hey, what do I want this holiday season to look like in my personal life? And then going to what it's going to look like in your business. And starting to what I call brain dump, just like, hey, what are some of the high notes that you really want to hit this holiday season with your family or the people that you love the most? Because here's what's the worst. When you show up, usually late as an entrepreneur, like myself, totally stressed out and not present for the people that matter that to you most. So that's when your business starts to cost you in a whole different way, right? Because chances are, if you are not present with your family, they are going to either push back, bring awareness to, or not really, you're not going to be able to enjoy that time together. So let's talk about what that looks like. What does it look like? And so we're going to kind of do a holiday brain dump. What are the things that are really important to you this holiday season, regardless of what holidays you celebrate? Is it that you take a vacation with your family? Is it that you make cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning? Is it like, I want you to download the top 10 things that for you would make this season so much more joyous? Because here's what I often find also with entrepreneurs, and again, speaking from my own filter, is that it is so easy for us to focus on what I call the gap. If you've ever read Dan Sullivan's book, The Gap or the Gain, we are, as entrepreneurs, we tend to finish things and then move on to the next thing before we've even celebrated the thing that we just completed that was once a target for us. So this is you starting to train your brain and open up your heart to what are the things that I really want to create this holiday season for memories, for moments that matter to me. And like I said, it can be a variety of things. It can be having one day where you work on your goals in complete peace and quiet in a totally different place than you normally would. It can be making cinnamon rolls. It can be a vacation. It could be a family dinner. It could be starting a new tradition. One of my favorite traditions that I started with my daughter last year is I bought her own little Christmas tree for her room. And she is October 1st birthday, so she's going to be 5 this week as of this recording. And man, it just goes by so fast. And one of the things I did is on a whim, which is very common for me, I bought a little white Christmas tree because she absolutely loves Halloween. So we started a new tradition where she has a Halloween tree. And then we went from the Halloween tree to the next month. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to put it away. Christmas is coming soon. What can I do for November? So for November, we did a gratitude tree. And then when Christmas finally came, she got to decorate her own Christmas tree with like her personal theme. And I actually kept the tree in her room. I think we went through Easter. So we did like March, we did January, we did I can't remember I think we just left the Christmas stuff on January. Then February, we did a Valentine's Day tree. March, we did a leprechaun tree. April, we did an Easter tree. And this has literally become like last Tuesday, I'm recording this on a Tuesday. She was so excited because she was going to come home from school and she was going to do her Halloween tree. And it was so adorable. And I was like, listen, this was not intentional, but this has become a new tradition where she gets so excited about the ownership of picking out and decorating her little tree. And as like silly as that sounds as an example, it also was something that like I put on my holiday brain dump. Cause like I said, I wouldn't teach any of you guys anything that I haven't done myself. So I put that up. That was actually the first thing that came up for me when I thought about like, hey, what's one thing that I really want to do? And then I did this exercise on the Monday before. By Tuesday, we were getting out the tree and we had so much fun. And I had so much fun taking and documenting it. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be so cute because now every year, right before she turns the next age, I'm going to be able to document what, like how tall she was and that sort of thing with taking a picture next to her decorated tree. So it's become a new tradition. Also, like we just bought a lake house. My husband and I had the conversation, where do we want to have Christmas this year? We had a conversation. So that went on my brain dump is like, I want to have an honest conversation with my husband is like, what does he envision Christmas looking like? Because Lily, my daughter, has already expressed that she really wants to have Christmas at the cabin. So I thought that was really cute, but it was like, this was something that I put on my brain dump. What's other things important? Every year, my husband and I do a date night away after the holiday, right? So after Christmas, where we go to a local hotel. So it's kind of a staycation, but it really feels worlds away, where the only thing we do together is talk about what went awesome in 2025 and what we see and envision for 2026 in the 4 categories of our life: balance, business, body, and what we call being. And that brought me to my next item, which was, what spiritually do we want to create? Like, what's a tradition? Do we want to go to church on Christmas Eve? Do we want to go to church on Christmas Day? Is that an option? And start kind of talking about what that looks like. Last year we opted for Christmas Eve Mass, but not going to lie, it was a little bit chaotic. Wasn't as enjoyable as I thought. I actually said, maybe this year we'll watch it online at the cabin. So just kind of talking through those things of hey, what's important to me? What was important to me was that my connection through church was a little bit more peaceful and not as chaotic. It was more focused on the real reason for the season and not so much like this hustle and bustle. Also, something we did last year, we wrapped gifts as part of our church fundraiser. It was the first time Ryan and I had volunteered together with our church. And man, it was so freaking fun. We had we did it as a date night one night. And I was like, man, I want to take that to the next level. What do we want to do? And in the past, we have chosen a family in need. Sometimes we know them, sometimes we don't. And we have bought Christmas gifts for every member of the family. We got a list from the parent. Usually it is anonymous unless we do know them. And then, so we talked about what family do we have any families on our radar that we would choose? So just started to think about what are those things that you would like to do, but also what are some of the spaces and feelings you'd like to create, which means that I need to kind of do a time and energy audit of how I'm spending my time currently so that I can make sure, like I said, this next month, I'm not focused so much on achievement. I'm focused more on aligning how I'm spending my time, how I'm spending my energy so that I can experience the feelings and look forward to the feelings I want to have with my family around this holiday season. So I wanted to kind of give you some of that, in addition to the starting with the brain dump, is that really when it comes to the energy audit, I feel like this is, I'm going to talk about it from a personal perspective, but this is also something I also do in my business, but I did it in the context of personal this time, so I'm going to share it. And I kind of wrote 2 columns. One says gives me energy and one says drains my energy. And this is where I start to look at and like I said, in a personal context, I'm looking at hey, what are the things that are giving me life right now? And I'm going to give you a good example of one of the things that came up on my list when I did this is my daughter last year did dance. And we did gymnastics just at the local YMCA. But the last couple of weeks, she asked me if she could go back to the other gymnastics place. And I asked her why. And she's like, I really want to learn to do some of these new movements that I can't do at the Y. They don't have the equipment. And I was like, okay. And so I signed her up for gymnastics. And then I said to her, I gave her a choice. I said, you can do gymnastics or you can do dance, but we're not going to do both. Because mom's not just going to be a taxi and be stressed out about being a taxi at the age of 4 at the end of the day after she has worked all day. And she was very okay with that. And then last week, while I made this list, I was like, man, that was such a good decision. She's already enjoying the gymnastics, getting so much more out of the gymnastics than she was the dance last year. Towards the end, the dance was getting a little bit more like I had to kind of force her to go. Even though I thought it was so cute, but her attitude about the gymnastics, because she asked me, has been so much better. So last week she asked me, can I do gymnastics twice a week? And I was like, sure, let me figure out how that works. So I did. And I was like, man, it really gives me energy when I'm bringing her to something that she's excited about. And I need to create more margin for me to have time to do things like that with her. So today's gymnastics day. And I was like, that gives me energy. It gives me energy to complete my day. Like, this is the last thing I need to complete before I pick her up. And then I put that in the column of gives me energy, taking Lily to gymnastics, signing her up for gymnastics. And then there's this other side that where, like I said, the drains energy. And the drains energy was, like I said, the dance class. It was kind of like a little bit more forced. I noticed she wasn't as engaged even in the class, whereas like the gymnastics, she's very focused, pays much more attention. And so I was like, man, there's a couple things that like it's draining me. And it was at a time that was really difficult for her. I noticed on the dance class, meaning it wasn't too close to when school ended, but it wasn't like too late. It was somewhere in the middle, but there in that middle was like, it had me lose a lot of time because there wasn't like something we could go do, but there also wasn't enough time for me to get home, let her change, relax, all that kind of stuff. So I had to kind of adapt there. But I realized how much this, like even the time was draining me a little bit because it was also a time when there was a lot of traffic that I wouldn't normally be driving in. So it was feeling it felt clunky for me. So I want you to think about the same thing going into Q4 is like, hey, what are some of the things that maybe we need to slowly progress out of that is draining my energy? And what are some of the things that is giving me energy or excitement or something I'm looking forward to? And I'm using an example with my daughter right now, but this could be anything. This could be like, hey, I really like taking this workout class. Again, this is on a personal note, but I noticed that I'm really dragging my feet and always late for this class because it's just not fitting for me anymore and it's draining my energy. Same thing could be like, hey, for some of the people you hang out with, it might be, hey, every time I have a scheduled call with this person, I'm excited about it versus this one I kind of have to force and kind of find time to make that might not be as organic. So really starting to look is like, what gives me energy? What drains my energy? And again, starting on a personal note. And then this is also something you could absolutely 100% be doing when you're looking at your business as well. And then that brings me to the next step. So we go from the holiday, what I call the holiday brain dump, Q4 brain dump. What are some of the things that you really want to see and feelings you want to create? That are more focused on presence over productivity. And then the next step being looking at your energy drain. What is draining my energy, what is producing energy? I like to think of the concept here just really like you have a battery and every night you go to sleep, you have an opportunity of it's going to be waking up charged or it's going to be waking up still where it wasn't fully plugged into the charger. And you still are, like on that little thin red line where it's like you have 20% battery left. So just really starting to digest and think about what that looks like for you, and creating that 2-column list. Gives me energy, drains my energy. And then the third thing that I'm going to have you do, just as like I said, you start to look at like what areas do you want to create presence over productivity? Where do you want to be more in alignment over achievement? Is your time. So again, this is an exercise that can be done personally and professionally. And I want you to look at this month's past calendar. Now, this is where I love the concept of what I call the 3Ds, where you're either going to say like, hey, of these things that I did, right? We're going to re-look in the filter of the energy. Did it give me energy or did it drain my energy? And if it drained your energy, you're going to start to run it through the filter of what I call the 3D formula. 3D formula is as follows. Is this something only I can do? So do I need to do this? Is number one. Number two is this something that I could possibly delegate? And when I look at that D, I write maybe a little bit of like a brain dump of who I could delegate it to. Might be someone you know, might not be someone present in your life at the current moment, which will give you some insight on Q4, maybe some new people you need to call into your life for support. And then, or is it something I need to delete? Is it something I'm doing that just doesn't need to be done or no longer brings me energy or, dare I say, joy? And I find, oh man, I've had so many conversations with not only myself, but other people recently, male, female, entrepreneur, not entrepreneur, about like just how it's so easy to be so busy that we are so caught up in our busyness that we forget to feel the really good feelings like joy, creativity, love, happiness, and how some of us really need to learn how to get more in touch with those feelings. And that's why, like I said, typically when I teach from the business perspective, I'm always focused on like facts, like what are your facts? And this is going to be a rare episode where I'm really teaching like what are those feelings that you want to create going into Q4, not focusing on what are the things that need to be checked off your to-do list to hit your 2025 targets. Because here's what I find. If you do these three things now, 90 days out from finishing the year, you're going to start to set yourself up for starting the year in a totally different place than you would if you literally hustled right through the holidays, where you burn that midnight oil, where you hit that second gear, where you maybe grinded your gears, and you just feel, like I said, depleted, disappointed, and disconnected from the people that matter most in your life. So this is an opportunity for you to have a checkup from the neck up, where you really start to feel like, hey, where am I overburdening myself on a mental note, and what has to happen to get much more from my heart space of what I want to create for not only my personal life, but my family's life. And then, like I said, the third wheel is kind of the business. Like, what do I want to create for my business? Maybe it's not so much your business as much as the people that work in your business as you go towards the end of the year. Maybe it's you want to make sure you have a kick-ass holiday party. Maybe it's you want to make sure you're able to give everybody a bonus. Maybe it's you want to treat them to something that they never would have bought themselves, or an experience they would have never had themselves. This is where, like, this is always something on my list. I always want to really show the massive appreciation for my team. That's something that I always look at, like, no matter how long they've been on my team, that is really important to me. But this is a feeling. I want to show gratitude. I want to have the people on my team know how much I'm grateful for them. And while that could mean a family dinner, or a team dinner, or a team party, what's even more indicative of my appreciation for them is, like, I write each one of them a personal card. And these are some people that are on my team that I don't interact with on a regular basis. Sometimes they live from afar and I want them to have a special gift. Or sometimes what I do is I pick out a book that I think each one of them might enjoy. And we don't even really so much do gifts as much anymore for our team, as much as, like, because that can get a little bit wonky. I feel like I get a little bit lost in trying to select personalized gifts for each person. And what we do is we give them a gift of, like I said, a team camaraderie, the community of us. And then we also give them a cash gift, because most people would prefer that over this gift that takes me a ton of time and thought and effort, because then they can do with what they want with it. So that's another thing on my holiday brain dump. So just really starting to dive in to really think about, like, hey, of the holiday brain dump, what are some of those things that are really, really critical for you to create some feelings that will leave you feeling energized going in to the new year. And here's the thing. You don't need to wait to January 1st to start a lot of this and join the whole group of people that start New Year's resolutions, which I truthfully believe are total bullshit, right? Like you can start a new habit or a new tradition at any time. It does not matter what the date is on the calendar. So that's why I want to do this episode, to really encourage you to look at, instead of focusing on productivity for Q4, focusing on your presence. What are the moments you want to create over this season that typically gets people very off-centered, so that you start 2026 in a very different spot, calm, cool, collected, and connected to what you want to create for 2026. And not only your family life, but your business, because that's why we're mom entrepreneurs. We started our businesses for a reason, not so that they would run us, but so that we could. Most women start their business because they wanted to create both time and money freedom with their families, so that they would be present more. That's the type of women that I work with, and that's the type of woman I hope I am, where I'm super conscious of how I'm spending my time, my energy, and my money last. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Moms Making Dough. It was, like I said, totally off the cuff, but just something that has totally been on my mind that I really wanted to cover. Maybe you're that person that needed to hear it today. And I hope you will share this information with someone that might also enjoy it as well. And as always, if you're feeling extra generous, always remember, we grow by having you rate us, review us, and hitting that subscribe button. Thank you again for joining us on Moms Making Dough, and we'll see you next week.